The Rainbow Tower. Written by Alex Tymms. Illustrated by R H Stewart. Episode 13. Indigo. "What in tower is that?" Silas yelled as they clung on to the wreckage of the lift. Jed fought down his tears. He wanted to scream and shout, but he knew that would not help. Not now. "It's after me," Jed replied as quietly as he could, wiping his face in annoyance as he pulled out his phone. He hadn't looked at Silas when he answered. Instead, all his attention was focused on the device. It illuminated his grimly determined face as he tried to follow the lines on the screen. "And what are you doing now?" Silas went on, increasingly unnerved. He'd assumed Jed was just some kid being led astray by an idiot with dreams of a better life up the colours. Now he wasn't so sure what was going on. "I'm trying to find a way out," Jed breathed, still not looking up. The tentacles tore away more of the lift and Silas squeezed closer to where Jed was hunched in the corner. "Well, we'll be lucky," Silas said, ducking as debris flew their way. "I don't just mean us," Jed replied, and this time he did look up, first at Silas and then the destruction beyond. "I mean them." He nodded towards the other lifts they could see, also under assault from the mass. "Everyone from here to red." Something had snapped in Jed. He had decided Trevor was the last. No more people would meet their deaths thanks to the mass. Silas stared at the boy who'd gone back to studying his strange little screen. Half a moment ago he'd have told him to shut up and stop being stupid. Now he said, "What do you want me to do?" "Got it," Jed whispered. "And this time I'm right." He looked up. "Call to the other lifts. That thing knows who I am and what I sound like. Tell them to climb. There's a horizontal service shaft linking all their lifts. They need to make their way into it." "And us?" Silas asked, the car rocking violently as he stared up at the dark rectangular hole above their heads and through which their lift had dropped. All around the hole was debris that must have once made up the upper floors of Indigo. "Somehow we find a way to bring them here," Jed replied, stowing the device back in his pocket. "Then we climb back up to Blue." "Well, yeah, just like that," Silas muttered, not looking convinced. However, he hauled himself up and began shouting instructions across to the other lifts while clinging onto the rocking car, which was becoming smaller and smaller as pieces were torn off. "Well, go on then," he shouted at Jed. "Get climbing. If they see you, they might follow." Jed pulled himself up onto what remained of the roof and grabbed one of the cables still securing the car. The cable was both rough and greasy at the same time. He could feel his palms slipping and being cut as they did so, but there was nothing for it but to keep going. Below him, Silas was shouting and pointing up, using Jed as an example. Jed stopped to look across the vast emptiness. Others had also begun the difficult climb. "Come on, Silas," Jed called down, then realised his mistake. Tentacles swarmed over the remains of the car, and Silas only just managed to scramble out the way and up onto the cable in time. "For tower's sake, keep your trap shut," Silas panted as he shinned up beneath Jed. They could both feel the cable tensing against them as the mass began to pull the lift downwards. Jed hurried. Already ominous straining sounds were coming from way above him, through the dark rectangular hole of the lift shaft. "This wire's not going to last long," Silas puffed. "Any sign of a way out?" Jed gazed up at the chaos around the hole. The mass had torn chunks from the walls, floors and equipment at the top of Indigo, leaving a tangled mess hanging from the concrete slab that separated them from Blue. The plan on the device hadn't even shown the concrete. Jed shook his head, not daring to answer. Maybe they could find a maintenance tunnel or similar escape route leading off the shaft. As Jed looked up, something splashed onto his face. He blinked the liquid out of his eyes to feel it running down between his cheek and nose, There was nothing he could do as it dribbled into his mouth. He couldn't wipe it away as he was clinging on to the cable with both hands, and the liquid had the strong metallic taste of blood. Jed peered upwards. He was splashed again, but this time he realised where it was coming from. A large ribbed pipe ran down behind the guide rails for the counterweight against the side of the lift shaft wall. It then turned a right angle to disappear into the remains of the top story of Indigo. Jed hadn't noticed it before amidst all the destruction. The pipe wall was damaged, torn in one of the attacks, Jed assumed, and it was from one of these gashes that the blood dripped. All he could assume was that someone had to be trapped inside the pipe, someone who was badly hurt and bleeding. Above him, there was a groan, and the cable lurched. Something, be it the pulley at the top or the connection to the counterweight, was about to fail. Either way, they had to find a way off the cable before it did. He climbed higher. It lurched again. "We're going to have to hurry," Silas said from below. Then Jed saw it. There was another gash in the ribbed pipe, there, just behind the counterweight. If he could cross to that, then they could not only save themselves, but also whoever was bleeding and trapped inside. It had been such a hard climb that Jed couldn't stop his leg from shaking as he stuck out his foot to step onto the counterweight. Between his hands, it felt like the cable would give any minute it was under such strain. His foot touched the counterweight and he pushed off. He made it across, thankful that the weight itself and its twin across the opposite side of the shaft were holding. Then he realised. It was the same as the glass lift, only in reverse this time. If the lift fell, then so would the weights. Jed made frantic gestures to Silas to hurry. The guard hauled himself across with Jed's help. "Well, where now?" he asked. Jed pointed to the pipe. Now he was near it. He could see it wasn't plastic or metal, but made of some sort of fleshy substance. "You're joking," Silas replied. The twang of the cable rang in Jed's ears a split second before the counterweight fell. He shoved Silas ahead of him as they jumped. Behind them, the cable mechanism came crashing down as the mass tore the insides from out of the shaft. Jed and Silas tumbled down inside the pipe. As they fell, Jed wondered what was going to happen to the injured person at the bottom. He hoped he wouldn't land on them. Silas landed on Jed, but there was no one underneath him. That and the walls of the pipe gave as Jed crashed against them, even the circular ribs. So when Silas squashed him, it didn't hurt as much as he'd expected. Silas staggered off Jed. It was unnerving to feel the whole pipe quiver and wobble. "Where are we?" Silas asked, and he touched the rent at the base of the pipe from where the blood had dripped on Jed. As he did so, his face contorted with pain, and he only just stopped himself from screaming. Jed went to help, but just as he was about to grab Silas's hand, he had to stop himself. His own hands were covered in blood and mucus from the damaged pipe, but he didn't feel a thing. Still grimacing with pain, Silas looked at Jed with narrowed eyes. "Who are you? Really?" he asked. Jed had no reply. Thank you very much for listening to The Rainbow Tower. To see more of R H Stewart's excellent artwork, you'll find him on Instagram at roy.hootson.stewart. For Alex Tymms, why not try the novel OutCaste at ao3.com? Or, for something completely different, check out the Amier series on YouTube or at amier.com, also by Alex Tymms. The Rainbow Tower. Text copyright Alex Tymms. Illustrations copyright R H Stewart. The right of Alex Tymms and R H Stewart to be identified as the author and illustrator of this work has been asserted in accordance with the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988.